In this final conversation Kimberly McKenzie and I had around the courage to lead differently, we dive deep into goal setting, why you must set goals that are personal, not just professional for you as a leader, how to do that, and where to get more help. Let's dive into that conversation now.
It's easy to get caught up in to-do lists and expectations. But if you don't have goals for your personal growth that align with your strengths and your values, you will stay stuck and stressed and you will not get out of survival mode. Today, we're going to talk about how to set goals that actually support your growth, goals that are aligned with who you are, not just with what's on your plate. Imagine how wonderful that would be. Before we dive in, here's something to consider. Do you actually have goals beyond what's written in your performance review? Goals that are about you, who you want to be, your growth, your values, your leadership. What is the next best version of you in all aspects of your life? That's what we're going to talk about today. And I am so happy to be here with you and my dear friend and colleague, Kathy. Hey, Kathy, how are you?
I'm doing good, Kimberly. You know, when you were reading that, I was kind of chuckling to myself because I'm thinking we're making the assumption that the nonprofit leaders we're talking to actually have performance reviews and goals. Uh,
Yeah,
because let's be honest, many of them don't. And if you need
right.
help with that, you can ask Kimberly and I, and we'll point you in the right direction. I am excited to be here as well today. We are rounding out our 6 conversations as we talked about the courage to lead differently. And we've been talking about what it's like to be a woman leader in the nonprofit sector. We've talked about our experience, we've talked about what we've learned and how we can help people grow. Before we get there, let's tell people exactly who we are, just in case this is your first time tuning in to our conversation. For women who are drowning in their work, feeling that full of self-doubt, unsure if they're cut out for the job, I help them ditch that imposter syndrome, develop those skills to be a better leader, and set the boundaries so that they can lead in a way that feels authentic and within that integrity space, values-driven leadership. And I recently published my second book, Character Driven Leadership, which prompted Kimberly and I to have these conversations. Uh, you want to grab the book, you can grab it anywhere online. It is available wherever you buy books. But it's been the opportunity for Kimberly and I to connect about our similar passions and the work we do. Why don't you tell people about you, Kimberly?
Well, I'm Kimberly McKenzie, and I absolutely love character-driven leadership and the book. Kathy and I are both Coactive Trained Institute ICF certified coaches. So there's a lot of alignment there around our training. I am a facilitator, strategic planning consultant, and one-on-one leadership coach. I work with people and organizations who are going through transitions or looking for alignment or trying to figure out what their next steps are or simply wanting to operate in a state of flow. And I work with boards, with teams, and with individuals from my home office here in Stratford, Ontario. So that's
Awesome.
who I am, and I'd love to talk to you about any of those things. But for today, let's talk about this.
Well,
How do we,
before we
yeah,
go there, I want to pause
sure,
for a moment.
sure.
Because you're in Ontario.
I
Do
am.
you smoke there?
Oh, up in Barrie, there's some smoke from Manitoba. Yeah, the fires are, as many of you know, my daughter was caught up in the fire in Jasper last year. And so um, when you go through a traumatic experience like that, the smoke is scary and because it becomes even more real. So in Stratford, we do not have a lot of haze, but up in Barrie, where my husband is today, he said there's a haze over the sun and you can absolutely smell the smoke from Manitoba in the air. So thoughts and prayers and good wishes to everybody who is combating
Yeah.
the fires this summer.
Well, and I'm in northern Alberta, so northern meaning farther north than Jasper. We have smoke, yes, the orange glow of the sun. So
Mhm.
we have fires stretching from BC to Manitoba and beyond. So I just wanted to pause for a moment to just acknowledge the support that nonprofits give when something like this happens. So if you are experiencing some of the help that you're getting as a result of being in the fire, or if you are one of the nonprofits. I was listening to some stories on the news this morning of shelters for pets. Like, could you imagine having to leave your pet behind? Or they were evacuating seniors, with dementia. Like, how do you get them into a big Hercules plane? And and so the care workers were leaving their families up
Hmm.
on this plane. And so I just
Hmm.
think when we're talking about nonprofit work, sometimes we talk sort of up here, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's just important to remember that on a day-to-day basis as a leader in a nonprofit, I just want to see that you're also dealing with a lot of shit on a day-to-day basis, and stress and crisis and things that sometimes we can't plan and prepare for. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's just tough right now.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's really why folks who work in the nonprofit space are more susceptible to burnout and mental illness, and compassion fatigue, because we are consistently, continually compromising our own well-being for the sake of communities. Or in times like this, and we hadn't planned on talking about this, but you're so right, and I'm glad you brought it up. In times like this, where we're in a state of emergency, we are, our adrenaline is pumping, nothing else matters, and you can only operate at that level for so long before your body
Yeah.
cries out for a
Yeah.
break.
Yeah. Well, and they were talking today, Wab Canoe, if I say his name wrong, I
Mhm.
apologize, in Manitoba was talking about the mental health supports that they're
Mhm.
providing the victims. And you're right, who's providing the mental health supports for the organizations that are providing the supports? Because
Exactly.
you don't sit in those situations, like you say, on high alert all day long.
Mhm.
The challenge, and I want to bring this back to the conversation today is a big, or this sort of season is a big stressful event. But in our nonprofit world, we cycle around these things that happen to us. Some are big things like this. I've had organizations go through floods, and even last year when the fires were happening, it was the some of the communities were bringing in, like, supporting the people that had been evacuated. We've got the pandemic, but it could be change in technology. It could be moving buildings. I've had lots of people who are moving sites, and there's a lot of stress. So how you're dealing on a day-to-day basis. So this comes back to character. We talked before about who you are in your lowest points is how people judge you. So when you're in that crisis situation, how are you showing up then? And that's the work of character development. And so when we're talking today, we're taking all of the stuff we've talked about and bringing it back to how are you going to become that person? How are you going to make sure that your floor isn't down here, but up here? That the
Mhm.
person you're being on the worst days is still somebody you can look in the mirror and be proud of. Um,
Mhm.
and you do that by setting goals.
And it takes a lot of work to get there. So, as we talked about in a previous session, this is a daily practice. Somebody said to me the other day, I could listen to you all day. Somebody called me this morning and said, I just needed 10 minutes of talking to you. And it gave me a moment of, how did how did that happen? How did that happen? And I think that, as surprising and delightful as it was for me to hear those things, it really did happen from all of the practices that we've been putting into place, but continuing to work on it on a day to day, continuing to raise the floor. And and part of that is, as you said, knowing, being self-aware enough to know where you want to be next. What's the next thing? And so let's get into these very specific ways that we can set some achievable, realistic goals for ourselves as leaders.
And that's the thing. They have to be realistic and achievable. What we often say is, I'm going to get better at. That doesn't do anything. I'm going to be a better leader. What does that even mean? Or I'm going to get better at time management, or I'm going to set better boundaries, or I'm going to be better at tuning into my staff's needs. What does better mean? We don't
Mhm.
know. We don't
Mhm.
do the work to get there. So when we're talking about setting goals, the first thing that I always, always, always tell people is we are teleological beings, meaning
Teleological.
teleological.
Oh my gosh, you're going to explain that, I hope.
I think it's a Greek word. We need a target. Without a target, we wander around aimlessly. I'm going to go on vacation. Where are you going? I don't know. I'm just going to hop in my car and drive. Okay,
That
lovely.
never happens. And and when I talk about strategic planning with organizations, I always have to start with where are you starting from? Because there
Exactly.
are so many ways to get to Vancouver,
There.
depending on where you are.
Yes, yes. So you need a beginning point, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about all of this. What are my values? What are my ethics? What are my morals? What are the traits that I want to develop? What hills am I going to die on? That's our starting point. Then we need that end point, right? Who am I becoming? I call it in the book your aspirational identity. But along the way, we need tiny goals, not big, massive goals. I'm going to be this wonderful leader. La 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 la. Okay, but what does that mean? Well, that means that I'm going to tone in on my open door policy. And I'm going to have an open door policy for 2 hours a day, not all
Mhm.
day, every day.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a big shift. So when we're talking about a goal like that, we actually need sort of the big goals. If you're thinking about open door policy, the bigger goal might be productivity, might be setting boundaries. But we need that sort of target, right? What am I aiming for? And then we need the pathway. The pathway is how am I going to get there? Like you said, what's the path that I'm going to get there? Well,
Mhm.
you might go on the train from, Halifax to Canada, and that's a way different path than on the road or
Mhm.
flying. And so
Mhm.
looking at the pathway, it's like, how are you going to get there? Right? What's the path? For some people, I have a course on time management in my membership site, and it's called The Emotions of Time Management. Way different than reading the productivity books. Way different.
Mhm.
I could keep going, but I'm like, oh, I go,
No, I
I'm done.
love this because you have these four parts of character development in the plan, and now you're only on the pathway. So we've got, what's your aspirational leadership
Yeah,
persona? What is it? What do you call it? The aspirational leader, the
identity.
leader you want to be?
Identity.
Uh, leadership identity. Okay. And then how are you going to get there?
Yeah,
So that comes down to knowing your skills and your strengths and your values and what you already have in your toolbox and what's missing in your toolbox.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then I love that you move into how do we measure success? What does it look like?
Mm. So if I'm measuring success of, let's stick with the example of, I'm setting better boundaries and I'm doing that 2 hours of time, I might measure how often I put 2 hour chunks into my calendar and communicate to my staff that this is when I'm open for questions. Okay,
Mhm,
might be able to measure that for a short period of time. I
mhm,
might also measure how many times do I, when somebody knocks on the door and says, "Do you have a minute?" Do I say, "Actually, I don't, but come back at 2 o'clock and I'm doors open for you then." You might measure how many times you actually set that boundary, right?
mhm,
So there's different ways around doing it. We have to think about if I'm looking at managing my emotions in a team meeting, I have this habit of getting triggered by a couple people at the team meetings because they say stupid things and it just drives me nuts. And like,
and they're idiots.
yeah, like and sometimes things come out of my mouth and I just like want
Whoops.
to, yeah, 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 yeah,
I know. I know.
right?
Yeah.
So when I think about that, that pathway might be meditation, right?
Mhm,
Meditation might be the thing you're doing. It might be learning about emotional intelligence. It might be
mhm.
going for some therapy. Like, I don't know your pathway. And this is why it's so important to create this individual pathway for you. Because why you say things, you might have to come back to your values work around, well, I value honesty and I'm just being honest when I'm saying what I'm saying. Okay. But
Okay, and you're also being kind of rude and abrasive. But if we again remember the power of the pause,
100%.
leading with curiosity,
Yes. Yes.
that can give us strength to raise our floor.
Well, okay, so good thing. If you're thinking again about pathways, if your strength is curiosity and you say things you wish you didn't, you could do a lot of work around what are some questions I can ask, right? What's the mindset shift I need to make here
Mhm.
around thinking I know the right answer and they're just like don't know what they're talking about, so they should stop talking? Okay,
Mm.
that's a mindset
But
I need to make.
right, and it's also pretty self-absorbed because um, if we again, we talk about perspectives in coaching.
Mm.
What if we take the perspective of the person sitting across the table from us And then we lead with curiosity and
Yeah.
we can say, tell me more about what makes you think A plus B equals C
Yes.
when we're talking about H.
So I love that because then you come back to measurement and maybe you're measuring that self-reflection. How many
Mm,
times after a meeting did I sit down and notice, did I ask a curious question, right? Did I tune into my body and notice the irritation
mhm,
and have the ability to refrain from saying something,
mhm,
ask a curious question? And if it's the answer is no, I didn't, did I rewrite what I wish I would have said?
mhm.
So when we're talking about goal development, when we typically think of performance reviews, it's, what are the goals our organization are getting, and I have to get to that, and I have to manage a budget and, achieve certain standards on accreditation. Those are lovely goals and those are important goals. What you and I are talking about here is how are you growing you? And if you don't have goals like this that are that specific, so we've talked about target, pathway measurement, and then timeline. I'm talking 90-day goals and even breaking those down into shorter. These are not year-long goals. If you're measuring and writing and journaling things like that, you want a tiny goal that you're working on short term. But when you create those goals that you're working on a regular basis, imagine the growth you're going to have.
And I don't remember whether it's James Clear or somebody talks about stackable habits
Yes.
and the idea of stacking your habits. So tiny little incremental changes throughout the course of the day actually build up. So when you are setting these aspirational goals, seeing the pathway as just this tiny step after step after step. Actually, my I'm going to share a little anecdote with you, Kathy. That's my son who just turned 27, just hiked the Camino de Santiago de Compostela this year. And I don't know if I've talked about this in one of these LinkedIn lives. I don't think he's had. I thought he would go away and have some big cathartic, wonderful experience hiking, right? And a couple of days before the end, it's very common to feel completely broken and frustrated and lost. And, and sure enough, I was getting text messages from him that he was feeling that way. And I had to reassure him that's actually a very common feeling for where you are right now in this 800-kilometer hike. And I picked him up from the airport, thought, okay, he didn't have the cathartic experience. He's just the same guy, pretty fabulous, but the same guy. That's fine. And we're driving back to Stratford from the Toronto Pearson Airport. And he said, I guess, you know what? I guess one of the things I learned was, at the beginning of this hike, I never thought I could walk 800 kilometers. But all I did was get up every day and walk 25.
Yeah.
And I guess I learned that I can do big things if I take them piece by piece by piece.
100%. I love that. I always hate the adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
Well,
time.
I know, because no one wants to eat an elephant,
We don't want to kill elephants either.
but you can hike the Camino
One step at a time.
one step at a time.
Well, and it circles back to our conversation last week when we were talking about the practices. The last practice was hone your habits. And so
Mhm.
the habits, and they're the habits, the mindset habits, the action habits. We're talking about the behaviors, right? That you're doing, what the tiny little choices you're making every day, do those things. The skill habits. Am I using my skills? Am I developing those skills and honing those skills? So we need to create all of those to give you this shift. And again, it's not, um, I'm just going to get better at time management or keeping my inbox clean. Keeping your inbox clean is not going to, it's not a goal. The goal might be something around, I'm going to notice when I open the same email 6 times, and it's going to make me pause and say, what am I resisting with this email? What is this email
Mm,
triggering in me? Am I afraid I can't handle by responding to this email? That is the kind of goals that we want to create.
mhm, mhm.
Want me to repeat?
And with respect to the time management piece, I love the example of just choosing the top three priorities each week and doing those first on
Yeah.
Monday morning, delayed gratification. The things that are hard for me, it was always, finance stuff, expenses, anything in an Excel spreadsheet. I
Yeah.
would have to do that on Monday morning.
Well, okay, so this is the measurement part. So I have one of those little old school coiled little tiny scribbler or notebooks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I write on it Monday and I write my three things. Tuesday I write my three things.
Do you really?
That's the measurement, right? All right, so
Mm-hmm.
then I can go back at the end of the every week and out of the 5 days, did I do it? Did I write three things? And did I check those three things off? And I will literally give myself a score. How did I do? Right? So and if you're not doing that, how do you know if you're improving? If
Mm-hmm.
there's no measurement, how do you know that you're actually doing something? And so when we're talking about measuring, the measuring is so that you can see if there's progress. And if there's no progress, that's where you need to course correct, right? Oh, wait a minute, the notebook theory isn't working. Maybe I need to set three alarms on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Or, wow, it is working. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And now it becomes a habit, right? And now I can habit stack, like you say. I can, okay, I've got my three things. Now, maybe the next step is I want to check in with three people each day. Hmm. Now that's an interesting addition, right? We start habit stacking once we've got them. I was going to read some examples, but I see your mind is whirling. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, here's my problem. I end up with a mind that goes into four different directions and then comes out with nothing. But you were talking about measurable goals, and I was just thinking about SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, what's the R? Realistic and time bound.
Yes, yes, yes. And so the time bound, there's actually my mind goes in all different directions too. Pierce Steele is a researcher out of Calgary. He has what's called the motivation equation. Motivation equals expectancy times value over impulsivity times delay.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like algebra.
It is algebra, but so you want the number at the top to be higher.
You heard what I said about Excel spreadsheets, right?
Yes.
Can you please say that again?
So motivation or procrastination equals expectancy times value over impulsivity times delay. Expectancy is, can I do it? Do I expect that I'm able to do this thing? Because if I don't have the skills, the confidence, there's no way I'm going to do it.
Hmm.
Times value is, how important is this thing? I am not going to be motivated if it's not important to me. I don't care if it's important to my boss. I have zero motivation, right?
Hmm.
Values. You and I've talked about values. If you can connect it somehow to my values, then
Hmm.
then I'm going to be more motivated to do it. So we
Hmm.
want those numbers to be high. On the bottom is impulsivity. If I'm getting distraction after distraction after distraction, I can't be motivated, right? Like there's no way.
Hmm.
And then delay. The longer it is, if I have to get into that dress next summer, donut on the table seems just fine to me. If the
Hmm.
wedding is tomorrow, I probably won't eat that donut, right?
Right. Or anything else.
Or anything else, right? So it's that delay. This is why the goals need to be really, really short. That delay, the shorter time frame, the motivation is higher.
Mm.
How we got off on that tangent, but
Well, because it's fascinating. I want to write that down, or maybe later you can put a link to that in the comments of this whatever this is.
yeah.
But so we're talking about, let's get back to it, setting goals and how to achieve those goals. We talked about setting a target, developing a pathway, figuring out how to chart your progress by measuring it, and a specific timeline. Some of our goals we talked about is time management, stronger leader. Um, what else do we have? I mean,
Give me some examples from the book. How does that sound?
yeah, that sounds good.
So in the book, I help you go really detailed. And if you work with me, I will help you create this level of detail with your goals. Because again, I am a bit of a goal geek and I think it's important. So here's your aspirational identity. So we start with that target, right? What's that ceiling that you want to get to? I'm a leader who is seen as being genuine, honest, and authentic. That's lovely, but what
Mhm.
does that mean, right? So your target, where you're aiming to, is that integrity piece, right? I lead with integrity. Okay, still, that doesn't do anything for me. Pathway, gain a better understanding of what integrity is and what it would take for my employees to judge me as being in integrity. That's where I had
Mhm.
to start. When my staff said I lacked integrity, I was like, what? Like, what does that even mean? Right? So I had to do the research to understand what that meant. Then I might review feedback on my performance appraisals to understand what my team is saying. Right?
Mhm.
Then I might have a conversation with Cindy, Dawn, Justin, whom I feel safe with regarding their feedback, right? I
Mhm.
might pick some of the employees on my team that I feel safe with.
Mhm.
I will journal about what I discovered about my reputation. Oh, people
Mhm.
think I'm a bit of a hothead. People think when things get rough, I just go in my office and close my door and they feel like they don't know what to expect, right? You'll get some insights. I'll complete a values exercise to clarify my values and how they manifest at work and life. Interesting. If you're going to lead with integrity, you're going to be in alignment with your values. So if you don't know what your values are, hard to be in integrity, right?
Yeah.
I'll do the VIA character strength profile, which will help me identify my character strengths. I'll create a habit of journaling about how in alignment I feel each day with my three core values, when I feel aligned, and what actions, mindsets, and habits would bring me back to alignment. I'm not done, but you see why these are short-term goals. You don't want to do this for a year. This is something you want to work on short term, get down into it, and really understand what's going on to make sense of it. I'm going to get into measure,
So,
but you got a question?
well, I want to challenge you a little bit
Absolutely.
because it just feels like it'd be a lot easier to just go home and drink a bottle of wine in the bathtub. For an overwhelmed, there's so much here and it's so rich and so dense. I just want to be the voice of an overwhelmed nonprofit leader to go, oh, I don't have the bandwidth to do that
When
stuff.
would I have time? When would I have energy?
Yeah, how do you overcome those barriers?
Yeah, micro moments, right? When we hopped on our call today, Kimberly was eating an apple, a
Mhm.
micro moment of wellness. How long did it take you to eat an apple? 2 minutes, right? Somebody else is going to go, I don't have time to eat. I just got to hop on the call. Well, Kimberly made space to eat healthy. And that's how you do it. It's intentional. And you said it earlier. This isn't easy work. This isn't something that you just snap your fingers and do. And so if you're not ready to do the work, you're going to do the thing that is, I'm just going to get better at it. All the
Mhm.
power to you. See how that works. I really
Yeah,
like you to
layering on that self-compassion. I
yeah.
think I think we need to, because all this can sound super intense and you know it so well because you've been doing it so often, but let's layer in a little grace and
Yes.
compassion.
Yes. Well, and here's the other thing. You're not going to do it. So that whole motivation equation that I just talked about, you're
Mhm.
not going to do it until there's enough value in doing it.
Ah,
Right?
yes.
So for me, the value was when the staff filed a grievance against me, right?
Right.
I had been in this for a year or more where things were getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I just kept saying, I wanted to get better. I wanted to get better. Oh my God, could they just like help me out? Like, this is ridiculous. And so that value, lots of people don't change their diet until they have a heart attack, right? Or you don't change your being until you get a divorce or whatever the situation is. Kimberly's hair falls out, right? And then you're like,
Right.
wait a minute, I need to do something.
Look how long it is now. I'm so proud of it. Look at that's like a year and a half worth of growth there.
That's pretty good. That's pretty.
I know. Anyway.
Sometimes the value comes in externally like that. If you really want to do the work, you have to create the value. Why is this
Mhm.
important to me? Right? And again, you're right. It's that if you're not ready to do it, that's okay. But don't expect things to change dramatically. It's that old adage of, what's the definition of insanity? Trying the same
Doing it
thing
over and over and over again.
over
Right.
and again. And so Start small. Baby steps. Yes, this is the work when you get to this. This is like why I wrote a book, because it's not like you're just going to do this tomorrow. When you grab the book or when you start coaching with Kimberly or I, you're going to do the work with us through the
Mhm.
book in our coaching. These are goals that we get to down the road.
Mhm.
This is the work,
And
and
the reward, I mean, I'm sorry, I talked over you. Is that okay?
100%.
The reward is extraordinary. And
Yeah.
let's just come back to why all of this work matters. Because when we started these conversations, there were some problems that we wanted to address. We
Yes.
wanted folks to know that we see them, we understand them, we have been them. We wanted to help solve some of this perma crisis and this burnout and the staff turnover through conversations around character and leadership. We wanted to help fundraisers who were moved into director roles feel more confident with the tools that they needed to be the kind of aspirational leader that they want to be. And we wanted to help women understand that their strengths as a people who lead with their femininity, that we don't have to check that at the door, that we can leverage all of the wonderful complexities of being a female forward person. What else? And we wanted to provide comfort
Mm,
to folks, just
yeah.
a little bit of comfort.
Well,
So
you said that a
go
minute.
ahead.
When you do the work, you feel the inner peace.
Yeah, you really do. Because you're not fighting against all these other tensions inside your body anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's why, we didn't say we're putting a big plug in for our coaching, but that's why coaching is so valuable. This is hard work. And to
Mhm.
have somebody alongside you, guiding you, supporting you, holding you accountable, a shoulder to lean on, giving you a different perspective. Um, I cannot tell you how many times I end a coaching call and somebody's like, thank you.
Yeah, every time. It's
Every,
every single time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I know when I had my coach, um, I mean, in the beginning, I could not cry because I was under such a mess. Um,
Mhm.
but I just felt held and supported and
Mhm.
understood and accepted for who I was and the messiness that was showing up and the mistakes that I'd made and um, the shit that I'd caused for other people. Like I felt that I was still okay to tell people that story. And
Mhm.
then as we started going through, and yeah, I'm doing the workaround. Let's look at your values. What does integrity actually mean to you? What does being a good leader feel like? It was that work over time. We're talking about 6 months to a year's worth of work. I don't know about you, Kimberly, but when somebody comes on with me, I'm like, that you didn't get here in a month. I'm not going to change things for you in a month.
Mhm.
We can give you quick answers, but this kind of deep transformational change, I'm going to go back to Chase on the path.
You know, mhm.
The work that he did on those 800 kilometers is going to impact him for the next 5, 10, 20 years, right? It's this step by step by step, but then it starts to build and snowball in a good way on top of one another.
So here we are, coming to the end of our six-part series. Um, and for us, we had some personal goals when we started this. We wanted to learn what it was like to work together and go play in a sandbox for a little bit. We wanted to learn LinkedIn Live. What other goals did we have
We wanted to
for
promote the
ourselves?
book. We wanted to promote the book, but not just the book because it's my book, the book because we wanted to promote the work you and I both do. We wanted to
Hmm.
the idea that as a woman, you can lead in a way that feels aligned. That was one of our big goals was like you said, to feel understood that there's a different way of leading
Yeah.
and to have the courage to lead that way.
Yeah. So do you have, before we get into what next steps are for folks who are listening to this either live or on the recording, do you have any final thoughts on this series, Kathy?
Just so people know, I popped a thing into chat so you can check that out. Um, I just want to say that I think what you and I have learned is how to take what you learn and apply it. And I think that's often the challenge that people have. You can read a book,
Mm.
you can take a course, you can go to a webinar, you can go to a session at a conference, but how do you apply that? One of the terms that I learned in our coactive leadership training, and that's the term coactive, right? Kimberly and I are both coactively trained, was dance in the moment. And
Hmm.
I have learned over years what that means. In this session, I've really lived it again and again and again. Kimberly and I do not have a script. We have a few bullet points. We don't do a prep. In fact, for the last three calls, we haven't even hopped on a call
No,
prep. We have an
but
opening line, right? And
yeah.
we dance in the moment. Just like you would dance with a good partner on the dance floor. And Kimberly and her husband do this. Um, it's how you show up. And that's what we're talking about in leadership as well, is dancing in the moment. You don't know when there's going to be a global crisis. You don't know when your staff are going to quit or the government changes funding or the big funder quits. You don't know. But you dance in that moment. And Kimberly and I are doing it. We hope we're role modeling it for you, but we also want to help you do that.
And I think to add to that, I do love the dancing in the moment. I had a client who was very driven come to me and say, okay, exactly what are we going to do? When are we going to do it? And she actually didn't choose to work with me. She needed something else because I said, actually, I deal with whatever's happening for you on that day, and we can't anticipate that. But the beautiful thing about having strong character and knowing your values, and using your values as a anchor or a compass is that it gives you confidence to deal with the uncertainty of what might be coming next. And it gives you the confidence to be really present in this moment right now.
The
And
term,
so,
the term Brene Brown uses is grounded confidence, and I love that.
mm,
It
yeah,
feels
I do love
grounded.
that too.
Yeah, when you're grounded.
So, my friend, what's next?
Next is Kimberly and I are going to enjoy the summer months. We are going to be with our families and do some of our work, as you all are doing over the summer as well, I hope. And we're coming back in the fall to do more of this.
Hmm. And when I hear you say that out loud, maybe we could, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I've loved this pilot. I like doing it, and I want to have a more structured series in September. And I worry about loss of momentum. But maybe that's a offline conversation that we could have. We will for sure have a regular schedule in the fall and think about ways to keep flexing these muscles. And I hope that folks found it helpful. Of course, we'd like to know, the numbers are still small but growing, and people are watching these recordings after, which is exciting. Um, so we'll continue to serve and continue to play in this sandbox together. Mhm.
Absolutely.
So, Kathy, if people want to work with you, what can they do?
Absolutely. Buy the book everywhere you buy books. And there's a second book that's always hidden back there. Mastering Confidence. We haven't talked about that, but I have two books out. So if you want to buy the second one as well, I have a membership site called the Training Library. I've popped the links into the comments. It is a place where you can connect with other women and grow and get the training you missed when you moved from frontline into management. And then, yeah, if you want to work one-to-one with me or you want me to come in virtually to your team, I've popped, again, my website in, DM me on Instagram, here on LinkedIn, wherever you are. Um, and yeah, reach out. And you, Kimberly?
Well, I am having a great month of June. I am working with a board of directors around what governance is and the role of the board versus the role of operations. And we're starting that to get alignment so we can move into strategic planning with enthusiasm, I hope. So you can hire me to come and work with your board of directors, or you can hire me to come in and do some professional development for your team if you want to incorporate some of these wellness practices uh, in your organization and help build mentally, physically, socially fit teams who can perform at higher levels and support each other and hold each other accountable, you can hire me for that. If you would like some private one-on-one sessions to manage a transition, or because you're floundering a little bit or imposter syndrome has taken over, I'm happy to hop onto a call and talk to you about that. And if you just want a 1 hour team training to introduce all of this stuff, then I'm happy to do that. So that's what I'm booking for September. I'm packed up with June, and I'm prioritizing my family in July, and then we'll go from there in the fall.
You notice that Kimberly and I both have family and wellness as our top priority, or not the top priorities, but at
No,
the
they are.
place.
And
Yeah,
I acknowledge the privilege that that carries, the privilege that it carries to be able to prioritize that is something that actually I designed in my life.
me too.
So, mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's it. I think we're done, Kimberly. So
Yeah.
thank you all for tuning in. If you have questions, pop them in. Follow us on we'll continue to post on socials, and we will see you soon.
Bye for now. Have a happy summer.